In my comparative study, I will be analyzing Snowpiercer and The Platform. My area of film focus is Marxism, and my topic is to what extent can class inequalities be traced in Snowpiercer and The Platform using a Marxist lens. The first film, Snowpiercer, is set in a post-apocalyptic world which was destroyed by climate change, and the last remainder of humanity is on board a train. The passengers on board the train live in their own class system, where the rich live in luxury and the poor live in squalor. The system is governed by the tyrannical dictator Wilford. Curtis, who belongs to the lower class or the tail section of the train, leads a revolt against Wilford in order to restore balance between the classes. The second film, titled The Platform, is about a prison structure where inmates are fed by a platform which brings food. Each month, the prisoners are randomly allocated to different levels of the prison, and the lower they go, the less food they get. The protagonist, Goreng, willingly puts himself into the prison in order to attain a diploma and leads a revolution within the system to bring about social change. Before delving deeper into both these films, it's important to introduce the idea of Marxism, Marxist film theory, and its origin. Marxism is an economic system which was created by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, which showed a society where workers own the means of production. Karl Marx was a German philosopher born during the Industrial Revolution. After witnessing many inequalities within society, like the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, he and Friedrich Engels wrote a book titled The Communist Manifesto in 1848. The book stated that the proletariat would overthrow the bourgeoisie to attain equality between the classes. This is known as the Proletariat Revolution. Marxist film theory emerged as filmmakers wanted to share Karl Marx's ideology through film as a visual medium. It emerged from Soviet Russia and utilizes techniques such as the Soviet montage theory and the Kuleshov effect. The theory is simply about the relationship between the filmmakers, the films they produce, and their demographic. It is a lens to see how film elements can have an effect on the audience's thoughts and feelings. Which Marxist ideas can be linked to Snowpiercer and The Platform? Both the films show the true nature of capitalism and how it constricts the working class of achieving social mobility, whereas the elites in society propagate the system of oppression by keeping everyone in line and suppressing any revolts. Class struggles and inequalities in both the films are conspicuous because it was the intention of both the filmmakers to truthfully state what the people right at the bottom of society, who are often overlooked, go through. Snowpiercer is a commentary on capitalism, but in theory, capitalism allows for individuals to achieve social mobility. There is no form of free market within Snowpiercer to attain social mobility because everyone is confined to their preordained positions within society.
Each of us occupy our preordained particular position.
Yet in a moneyless society, there are mass inequalities. The first-class people and Wilford in Snowpiercer show traits of the bourgeoisie. They control the means of production and control those below them. They live in the lap of luxury with everything provided for. The bourgeoisie, or the 1%, are the elites in society and have enormous amounts of wealth by buying labor from the proletariat and not doing much themselves. The back of the train houses the proletariat, or in the film known as tailies. They're the vast majority of the train's population, yet they're subjected to the worst living conditions and offering nothing but labor to the train. The proletariat are the working class of society. They don't own the means of production and account for most of the world's population. Wilford controls the tailies by using violence and means of torture to keep the tail section in line. This is a common tactic used by tyrannical governments and dictators throughout history. The train is not only a metaphor for capitalism, but more so the entire system we live in. The train is perpetually moving forward in a constant need for growth and profit with no light at the end of the tunnel. Namgoon is an intellectual and he sees beyond the system. There are many scenes where we can see him and his daughter Yona looking outside the train, whereas the revolutionist Curtis is often seen as looking forward. After the fall of the Soviet Union, in society it was pretty much established that capitalism is the only way to move forward and there is no such alternative. Wilford uses indoctrination to retain his power. His followers are made to believe that there is no such alternative to the train or the system they live in.
You ever go outside the train? We all freeze and die!
This form of relationship that Wilford has created is known as hegemony. In Marxist terms, it's a type of relationship that's already been pre-established. This type of relationship is when people are born into a particular system and it's been widely accepted within society because people aren't aware of any alternatives nor are educated as such. Stated by the director, The Platform isn't a social critique but more of a social self-criticism. The film aims to talk about the inherent selfishness of human nature at an individual level. The film shows two sides of society, Gorang and Trimagasi. Gorang represents a revolutionist and idealist who wants to bring about change within the system and restore balance.
¿Para qué? ¿Para qué? Pues para que racionen la comida. Comunista.
Whereas Trimagasi represents a cynic who is perpetuating the system by being selfish and inadvertently maintaining the cycle of oppression. When the prisoners are randomly allocated different levels each month, it's a metaphor for how much is predetermined about your life depending the type of family you're born into. Depending on which level you are on in the platform, it completely changes the way you treat the ones below or above you. Food in the platform is a major allegory for wealth in society. The ones at the top get meticulously prepared food, whereas the ones below are made to eat the scraps of the ones above. The idea of the self-management system is that the inmates will only eat as much as they truly needed. This is not the case because the food barely makes it to level 50, and there are hundreds of people below who have to resort to literal cannibalism in order to survive. Since there is actually enough food for everyone to stay alive, the blatant selfishness of the people above makes sure that the people below will starve. Both the films have a common theme of the proletariat revolution. In Marxist terms, the proletariat revolution is against the bourgeoisie in order to seize the means of production. Although this is more explicit in Snowpiercer, when Curtis leads a revolution to take the engine. In the platform, Gorang and Bharat descend the platform and enforce rationing between the inmates to form a system resembling socialism, where people take as much as they need. Both the films can be considered not only to be a critique of capitalism, but forms of government like socialism or communism. Both the films show the inherent selfishness and greed the ones at the top have, and it would only take a spontaneous sense of solidarity from everyone, including the ones at the top.
Pero algo de pasar en el CVA tarde o temprano. Algo que haga florecer una solidaridad espontánea.
A common characteristic of both the films is the type of architecture used. The platform uses a brutalistic form of architecture. This style draws inspiration from Soviet-era buildings, whereas in Snowpiercer, most parts of the train take an industrial form of architecture, resembling a giant machine. There is also a clear distinction between how the wealthy and poor live in both the structures. Trains and towers are common symbols of hierarchy. The vertical self-management system of the platform resembles a high-rise building, where the wealthy live on the top, whereas the poor live right at the bottom. The train in Snowpiercer represents the world we live in. The tailies are made to believe that there is absolutely no life beyond the system, but in truth, there is life beyond the system. There are alternatives. Snowpiercer was a box office medium budget film, and its main idea was to recuperate as much money as it could from the box office. Compared to The Platform, which is a Netflix original film, these films are produced and funded by Netflix, so they own all the rights to the film. Bong Joon-Ho's work in Parasite has been critically acclaimed, and there are common themes and ideas between Snowpiercer and Parasite. The reception among critics have been widely positive for both these films and have been praised for talking about class struggles. Bong Joon-Ho and Galder are both filmmakers who want to start a dialogue about the society we live in and ask ourselves very difficult questions about our own morality. Both the films talk about the abolishment of capitalism by everyone committing to a spontaneous sense of solidarity. For capitalism to be brought to its knees, the spontaneous sense of solidarity would have to come from everyone, including the elites at the top. In The Platform, Gorang is only laughed at when he tries to change the system where people eat as much as they need, and in Snowpiercer, it's clear that many revolutions have taken place in the past but have failed. Coming back to Karl Marx's ideas about the proletariat revolution, taking the engine, or sending a message, are all linked to the revolution which is imminent in this day and age of mass wealth inequalities. Snowpiercer touches upon the environment, and man's lust for power and profits leads to the devastation of the environment. As global warming becomes more and more of a threat to humanity, we need to realize the repercussions of neglecting our environment might entail. Both the films are linked to segregation and racism within society, wealth gaps becoming extremely prevalent, and in wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world's elites got richer by $667 billion and were virtually unaffected by the pandemic. The effects of the lockdown were mainly affected by the working class. Though very similar, my interpretation of The Platform and Snowpiercer's ending is that the abolishment of capitalism is the only way to achieve social justice within society, and a spontaneous sense of solidarity from everyone is a monumental task and one that is near impossible. Therefore, abolishing the system is the only way to mitigate suffering and oppression by starting fresh. In conclusion, I've talked about Marxist themes and ideas which can be observed in both the films. I've talked about the metaphors, allegories, and political messages of both the films and how they provide a real sense of class inequalities and struggles.